Okay, everyone, I'm back with another worst to first ranking of an album video. The last one was a lot of fun. It was Kiss Love Gun. And that was an album I heard when I was really young, like 7 or 8 years old. But I thought I would choose one that I only heard when I was a little bit older, which is Houses of the Holy by Led Zeppelin. It wasn't until my stepdad entered my life that I was able to have access to all this new music. So he was really into Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and a bunch of really cool bands. And I remember seeing this album cover and just being like, this is kind of weird looking, you know? He had some album covers that were kind of controversial, actually. I remember the Blind Faith one in particular. But I know the Houses of the Holy cover had a little bit of controversy with it. I think some people just got a little bit of kind of butthurt over it or something. But I remember the first time I played that vinyl because he had this really great vintage setup, the record player, the receiver, I think it had tubes in it. And then he had these really old school headphones that were really big and clunky, and they looked like they were from the 70s or something, but they sounded incredible. Sometimes it feels like they just don't make things like they used to, you know, that old saying. The other day I was cleaning out my closet and I found the gray box set, the Led Zeppelin box set that everybody went crazy over when it first came out. I actually spent my second paycheck that I ever got on buying this for a girl that I liked. And I thought it was such a cool box set that I bought one for myself. So that's the one that I found in my closet. So I popped in Houses of the Holy and I thought this would be a great one to do a video for. Now there are only 8 songs on this album, so if I rank a song kind of low, you can't hold it against me because, I mean, this album is so full of great tunes that it was so hard to pick a worst to first. But I'm also going to try playing a few of the riffs on guitar and even one on the drums so that it's a little more of an immersive experience. I'm not just going to tell you my opinions. I'm actually going to show you some of the reasons why I love these tunes. So number 8, this might piss a lot of people off, but it's The Crunch. And it's just a bizarre tune to me. It was never like a mainstay song. But once I started getting into drums and bass, actually playing those instruments, this song became way more interesting to me, especially that crazy intro. I guess they were trying to go for like a James Brown type of groove, but leave it to Led Zeppelin to make it in 9/8 time. So if you guys don't know what that means, if you count eighth notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, it's an odd number. So it's really weird if you think of James Brown dancing to a 9/8 time signature. It's kind of funny. I always wanted to learn that intro on drums, and for the last couple days I've been sort of toying with it a little bit. It's actually a very difficult groove to get down, but I gave it my best shot. So check it out. This is from earlier today. Now, speaking of James Brown, towards the end of the song, you could hear Plant start to say something like, where's the bridge? Have you seen the bridge? And so I was waiting for the bridge of the song to kick in, you know, when I first heard the tune. But what's funny is the song just ends after that part. So it was kind of a callback from what I know back to the James Brown song where he always says stuff like that, like, take us to the bridge. Where's the bridge? So it's kind of a play on that. One of the things I don't love about the song is the synth sound and the synth part, which is really weird because I usually love everything John Paul Jones does. But when it comes in, for some reason, it reminds me of like a 70s or 80s, like a TV show theme song for some reason. Okay, for the next song, I have to change guitars. I don't know why I'm holding this one. I haven't played it yet, but it feels good on my lap. So number 7 is The Song Remains the Same. Now, remember, don't get mad at me. There are only 8 choices, so I had to put something towards the end. And I love this song because it gives me a feeling of excitement and optimism when it first kicks in. I remember one time it was the beginning of summer vacation, and there's just this feeling of freedom and possibility, you know, whenever you first go on summer vacation as a kid. And I recall hearing the intro to this song, and just the way the beat kicks in, it's just such a happy sound. It's so energetic. But I tried learning this last night. It's kind of a crazy riff. Like, there are a lot of these stabbing chords that you have to hit really fast. So from what I read, Jimmy Page intended this to be an instrumental, but then Plant, you know, wanted to add some vocals to it. So then it kicks into that halftime part where the vocals come in. And I kept thinking, you know, it must be really cool to have somebody who could write such great music and then just put some words over the top of it and you have a classic song. Another thing that I really love are the country type bends in the song. He's really good at doing that. If you listen to quite a few Led Zeppelin songs, he can really infuse those country bends. It almost sounds like a B-bender type of a sound. The next song has a bizarre title. It's actually supposed to be pronounced just Jamaica, I guess, but I always used to call it Dire Maker. I think a lot of people used to. And it's supposed to be from a joke where the punchline is something like, "Did you make her?" And then they just kind of shortened it to Jamaica. And it's kind of funny because the riff in the song reminds me of like a Caribbean type feel. So I never really cared for it because I thought it sounded way too happy. But then when it kicks into the next part and it gets really heavy, it balances it out really well. When I read the letters you wrote me. So what's kind of interesting is that weird island sounding part is really just a common 4-chord progression. So it's a 1, 6, 4, 5. So C, A minor, F to G, which sounds like this typically. Kind of like an Earth Angel type of progression. But the way he breaks it up is pretty genius. It's funny because you have to play that part really crude. You can't be really perfect when you play that, otherwise it just doesn't feel right. The solo is really interesting to me, not necessarily how he's playing it. I mean, it's a great solo. It's just how it sounds. It sounds like someone's down the hallway at your house jamming out in their bedroom. So I picture little Jimmy Page like as a kid in his bedroom. You know, his walls are lined with blacklight posters and he has lava lamps. And he's just down the hall in his bedroom just jamming out. And that's what it would have sounded like. Number 5 is a song I have to play because I'm holding this guitar, but it's Over the Hills and Far Away. The reason why I say I have to play it is because every time I held a 12-string when I was learning guitar, we'd go to Guitar Center, somebody would always ask me to play Over the Hills and Far Away, so I learned it specifically for that reason. Anytime you're holding a 12-string, it's like, right? You almost have to play that when you hold a 12-string. You probably notice I'm not really playing the riffs from start to finish. It's mostly because Zeppelin is really strict on copyright. Almost every time I play a Zeppelin riff, it gets dinged by like the AI copyright gods or whatever. So that's why I'm kind of breaking it up a little bit. So there was a time when all I knew on acoustic or 12-string was Fade to Black, One, and Over the Hills and Far Away. But I had a lot to practice because of that. Okay, back to Zeppelin. Sorry about that. One time we played this song and The Ocean at a student showcase concert, and it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot by learning the solos to these tunes. One riff I remember having trouble with, though, was the in-between riff, where you have to do these really quick bends. Something like this. It's something like that. Very hard to hit those quick bends like that. Number 4 is The Rain Song, and I love this song so much that I actually did a cover of it like 12 years ago. Quite the education because I had to learn the correct tunings and everything, but I've had a lot of fun playing it. It has this ethereal quality to it. And I read somewhere that it actually was born out of a dare because I believe that George Harrison was talking to, I don't know, John Bonham or something, and he's like, you know what's wrong with Zeppelin? You guys don't write any ballads. That's just what I heard. So that's what's kind of funny about bands. You know, people talk about competition being a bad thing, but I think it's a good thing sometimes. So if somebody comes up and kind of dares you and they say, you know what's wrong with your band? You guys never do this. It could sometimes inspire a band to do something as great as write a song like The Rain Song. So I thought that was a cool story. This is also one of those tunes that puts you in a mood. So if you play it, it just brings you somewhere else. You know, even if it's not in a memory in your head, it's to a place where you just want to chill out, at least for me. And then when the Mellotron kicks in, that's when it really brings me there. Just how big those Mellotron strings can sound. I mean, it just takes up the entire sound spectrum. And it brings a song that's already epic up to another level. So that's the crazy thing about this band, is you think, okay, this is a great guitar riff, and all of a sudden John Paul Jones steps up. Sky's the limit, basically. This is another song where it feels like it could have easily been just an instrumental, but then Plant puts his, 2 cents on it and it becomes a whole different song with vocals. And when it really kicks in at the end, you really hear how this song and Zeppelin in general influence so many bands. The first thing I thought of was a particular Dream Theater song that has the exact same type of vibe. One thing that surprised me when I was learning it on guitar, I'm not in the right tuning right now, but it's towards the end, there's this arpeggiated part that sounds like a Slayer riff to me. Number 3 is the song Dancing Days. This is a classic. Like I said, this whole album is full of them. What's weird is I was listening to it on Spotify the other day, and in the very beginning, if you listen to it, it sounds like there's a bit of a tape flutter sound. Like you hear it slow down just for a half a second and then come right back to full speed. And I always thought it was just a defect on the record that I was listening to, but it turns out it's actually on the master recording. After I left my first job selling CDs and cassettes, I went across the mall to a place called Sam Goody. It's like an old school record place. And I was excited because I went from making $4.25 an hour to $5, I believe. So it was a big step up in my life. But they sent us this Led Zeppelin covers album that had all these different artists, like huge artists on it. I think Sheryl Crow was on it, Stone Temple Pilots were on it, and they actually did a cover of Dancing Days. You'll be my only, my one and only. The fact that Jimmy Page could make such a timeless and groovy riff out of really 3 notes is incredible. So the 3 basic notes are, and if you add the open strings with it, so don't think you have to have a million notes to make a great riff. Sometimes it's the most basic things done in the right way that seem to have the most power. It never fails. When that song kicks in, I always find myself bobbing my head. It just has a really good vibe, like a really good feel. And that's why it's so high up on the list amongst all these awesome tunes. But when I read about it, I guess Eddie Kramer talked about the whole band was vibing on that song. Like everybody just had fun playing it. And this is one of those times where you could feel it coming through the speakers. Number 2, can you guess what it is? It's The Ocean. And this was really hard not to put The Ocean at number 1, but you know, a lot of you probably already know what number 1's going to be now. But it's one of those tunes that have been with me my entire life, and I actually learned it on guitar early on. And it was one of the first odd time signature riffs I ever learned, so it taught me a lot. Like I said before, we played this at that student showcase, and I got to play the guitar part, but the other guitar player was my student Scott. And his dream was to play that on stage, but what he really wanted to do is he wanted to do the dialogue in the beginning. And so he got his wish, but sadly, the video that we have of it cuts off a little bit of it. But here's the part we were able to capture.
Then they went 1, 2, 3, 4.
Isn't it crazy how something that can seem so trivial to some people can be such a big deal to others? And then the band went on to play the song really well, which made my day, so everybody was happy. It was actually really tricky to play the solo that goes over the main riff, just because that odd time signature throws it off in a strange way. So I'm so used to soloing over 4/4 a lot of the times that when all of a sudden it's an odd time, it just threw me for a loop. And the number 1 song on my list from worst to first, from Houses of the Holy from Led Zeppelin, is No Quarter. I don't think too many people can disagree with me that this is one of the most legendary Led Zeppelin songs there is. Talk about a song taking you somewhere. You know, it's kind of like Pink Floyd did this. And by the way, I found out too that Dark Side of the Moon came out the same year as this album. So there's something about 73 that was really special. But when I put this on vinyl, it was the middle of the night. Everybody had already gone to bed. I was listening to my stepdad's records. I put on those big cans for headphones, and I played this song. And just that real creepy keyboard part starts up. And you can actually hear the hiss from the instruments, but also from the recording. I believe it's from the tape. And instantly you're in a whole different place. I felt like I was in some abandoned castle or something. And then when the haunting vocals come in, it has this phasing flanger type effect to it.
Close the door, put out the light.
That really hits hard when you listen to it with headphones. Try it sometime. There's this epic guitar riff that I've always wanted to learn correctly, but I always thought I was going to need a fuzz pedal to make it sound right. I read that he actually plugged into the console, and that's a trick that a lot of people did in the recording studios back in the day. So you'd plug right into the board and crank up the gain, and it would give you this real fuzzy sound. I think Trent Reznor uses that quite a bit. But I have my hyper fuzz pedal, so let's try it. That riff sounds like it's in slow motion for some reason. And I know they would slow the tape down sometimes, so maybe that's what gives it that quality. Just the way that snare smacks. It's just the sound of the room is always present, and it just has this real power to it. So those are my picks from worst to first for Houses of the Holy. If you want in the comments section, go ahead and give me your list. And then also, if you have any Led Zeppelin memories from listening to this album or any other songs, that'd be great to hear as well. Hope that was fun to watch, and I look forward to doing a lot of these. You know, there's so many great albums that I grew up with that it's fun to go back down memory lane a little bit. I think that's why I love making these videos, because I can learn so much about these songs that I grew up with, but I could also have the added challenge of trying to rank them. So, okay, everyone, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.